right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever it is that you're joining us today. My name is Ali Hirji. I am the lead of the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation at Durham College. You know, they say that creativity is when you think about new things. Innovation is actually when you do new things. In new environments, situations that require creativity, innovation is the key. And the people that I have here today are great people to talk to about how, in this uncertain climate, we're able to secure funding, but more importantly, we're able to secure the technologies that we need in order to manage ourselves in this new normal. We have folks who come with a very strong cybersecurity background. We have folks who understand that data is the new oil. If AI is the rocket, data is the fuel. We have folks who are working on smart cities. We have folks who are working on financial technologies. And then we have panelists who come from a global perspective, not just from my pleasure today to welcome our panelists. I'm not going to introduce them myself. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Michael Castro. Michael?
Hey, hello everybody. So Michael Castro, I am a cybersecurity expert, 21 years in the business, now founder and president of Risk Aware, a cybersecurity boutique.
Thank you, Michael. John, over to you.
Hi, I'm John Pinard. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. We're a government regulator for the Ministry of the Environment.
Thank you. Neil?
Neil Apolsamy, I'm the CEO at Forpay Incorporated. We're a fintech technology provider. We operate internationally. My background, I have about 25 years in fintech / telecom experience.
Fantastic. Eric, over to you, sir.
Hi, it's Eric Pulnicki. I work for City of Brampton in information technology and digital innovation team, and I'm a senior manager, and under my portfolio there are solutions and smart city workloads.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Malik, the last introduction is over to you, sir.
My name is Tariq Malik. I'm former Chief Technology Officer of Pakistan Army. I did my first hack in 1988 on the Australian Academic Research Network. Since then, I'm within the security business. And just to add that I also looked after the security of Dubai Smart City initiative as well.
Thank you very much. I was born and brought up in Dubai, what we like to call the land of have yachts and have nots. So we have lots to talk about. Let's jump right into the conversation today. I see approximately 33 people in here. I also see Devin from the City of Brampton and Invest Brampton. So I do want to thank both Invest Brampton and Forpay for sponsoring this session and supporting the cyber exchanges this week. Let's jump into the fundamental question that we're in right now. Yesterday, I was doing a session with Minister Rod Phillips, along with Mayor Sean Collier and MPP Khalid Rashid. And we talked about this aspect of the framework of reopening Ontario. Slow and steady, as Marge Simpson says, wins the race. But when it comes to all of us moving our businesses online, we moved in extremely fast, where typically we had a 1-year period for digital transformation. We completed that in 1 week. What security measures have we kept in place, and are we truly secure? Michael, I want to give you a minute to talk to us about the pace at which we have moved into this new this new digital world and our cybersecurity posture. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. No, there's no doubt that, this scenario that we've been put in has really accelerated and amplified the need to use technology to get everything up and running. And for sure, out the gate, productivity, connectivity have been the #1 priorities for everybody. And we have succeeded as a society. Unfortunately, though, security has, taken a bit of a backseat on all that, has opened the door for a lot of opportunities for threats and hackers to take advantage of those gaps, whether it be through remote workers, through those that are connecting on their personal Wi-Fis, or any of those aspects. And whether it be e-commerce, whether it be access to the offices, cybersecurity has, been that small sister to the productivity piece. The good news is that's changing, and that's where I think everyone now is starting to say security has to be part of this as well.
I want to take that thing about security not as an afterthought, but security by design. And Neil, when we were talking, you were mentioning quite a lot about the various aspects of how different businesses now have reached out to you about, hey, we want to take our transactions online. We need to transform. We need to execute on our deliverables online. And from a financial perspective, you've had to walk them through some pretty serious cybersecurity scenarios very quickly. What's that been like for you, and how has ForPay been managing that?
Well, because this is a new normal, and Michael's quite right that security has taken a back seat to a lot of the projects that took priority prior to COVID. Now that things are online, effectively the design that is being brought forward has to protect the users, has to ensure that the product and the brand that's being brought to market at such breakneck speeds is being accounted for. There's no time for afterthought right now. It has to be baked in at the inception of the project. So we've seen the security conversations with our customers. Our clients we've woven that into almost every meeting. How is a functionality going to benefit, but how do you protect a functionality? And so it's a part of every meeting. Makes the days longer, but it ensures that at the outset, you're not putting security in the back seat.
And I like that analogy of not putting security at the back seat. And you need the leadership and guidance in order to ensure that you're able to do that. The cost of accessing cybersecurity talent just like that is quite expensive. And this is where I want to sort of open the door to our municipal partners here, and with Eric. Eric, from the city of Brampton's perspective, I'm sure a lot of small to medium businesses have been coming to you about what resources are available to you, or available to them when it comes to moving their operations online, especially from a financial standpoint and executing on transactions, e-commerce being one example of that. What is the city of Brampton doing to ensure that these companies moving online in this hyper online world are staying safe and secure and not using cybersecurity as an afterthought? Eric?
Yeah, so from that perspective, we have a built-in mechanism to make sure that whatever solution we put in place is secure. So that's in terms of how you build and how to implement the solution. The challenge always is that speed of implementation or requirement for the fast implementation is now being bigger and bigger, and we need to deliver faster and faster and new elements. And then this is where the biggest challenge is, how to make sure that we do not cut the corners. Because if we do everything according to the plan, according to the framework, according to our design and implementation principles, then there is not a big problem. The problem starts when we have to cut the corners because the timelines are being too aggressive to go with standard process and standard way of doing things. And the other elements is also, I don't know how many of you are experiencing that, but we as a municipal environment and government, we need to be compliant to many regulations. And this is not easy, especially when those regulations are maybe outdated. And I'm talking about the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, which is very strict, but at the same time, it is not as easy to comply with because it doesn't really match the current state of technology and the way we're doing the business. So that's one element. And another element is compliance to accessibility of for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. That is also bring those challenges when you need to put the solution quickly in place, and it needs to be secure, it needs to be compatible with other rules and regulations.
Thank you for that, Eric. And I do want to bring in Mr. Tariq Malik to sort of comment on a smart cities perspective, especially the Dubai perspective, which is go big and big and big and never go home. So we'll talk to Mr. Malik about how, in other global contexts they've sort of accommodated for fintech and securing that. John, from a privacy, from a compliance and a security perspective, moving more operations online, financial transactions online, what are some of the challenges that you see from a security perspective that need to be addressed?
Well, from our standpoint, we built from the ground up. And so we had the pleasure of making sure that cybersecurity and privacy was built in and threaded into the core of what we implemented. We are, as I said, we're a regulator of Ontario businesses, and there's a lot of commercially sensitive data that was critical, that we not only ensured that data was secure, but we actually had to prove to the stakeholders that their data was secure. And so, it was a really tough balancing act between accessibility and security. And even more so now, all of our registrants were all already online, but one of the issues that we ran into on March 16th, actually, was how do you take all of the individuals that were working in the office and locked down that data so it was only accessible from our office. And now all of a sudden, come March 16th, on March 13th, it was only available from within the office. On March 16th, we had to make sure that all of our staff had access to the same data and only the same data that they had when they were in the office, but working remote. And so it has meant ensuring that we maintained a lockdown state, but opened a couple of doors just to be able to allow people the people that needed to access that data to get in from their homes. So it's been quite a challenge, but it has proven to be successful. I think everybody in the organization was impressed at how quickly we were able to flip the switch without risking any data.
No, absolutely. I mean, one of the things in Henry Ford, right, a statement where he said, if I ask the public what they wanted, they'll all tell me faster horses. But you folks are in that situation where you need to not only know the technology, you need to know how to apply it, you need to know how to scale it, especially sitting in a leadership position. Now, I want to turn the conversation to Tariq Malik and give him a couple of minutes to talk to us about how have cities been prepared, or have they been prepared for a moment like this where you have no choice, but you have to take everything online, you have to move all of your transactions online, and you have to secure it. Were we ready for this? And I know it's a broad question, but I'd like you to speak to it perhaps from the perspective in Dubai, but from a general global perspective. Malik, a couple of minutes to you.
The quantum of that exercise is so big that very few people can actually really understand it. And the reasons, I'll give it to you. When a city decides that they want to automate everything, and they also decide that by 2021, they will be paper-free, paperless. The whole idea started that the Sheikh of Dubai decided that he wants to make his people happy. For them to be happy, he wanted to provide services which make their life easy. Once they decided to make services which makes life easy for the people, they looked at all the aspects and all the services which were offered by Dubai e-government, which happened to be designed by me, Dubai municipality, and the linkages of all the services with all the other departments, including Ministry of Commerce, Law and Order, Immigration, Police, whatever you take it, they all had to be connected. Then you start looking at it, all the sensors. If a sensor is coming from a taxi, the sensors from the trains are moving, the sensors which are sending the data from airports. And as you move forward, you look at the amount of data coming towards you. So you have to first look at the data, you have to sign the agreements. What sort of data is visible at the central side by whom? Then which protocols and how the data will come back? Which technologies will be used? Each and every technology had its own problems. What standards one will have to use when the data comes back from different sensors as a smart city? So you very rightly asked the question that were we ready? I have to say that even though I worked in the military environment and where, again, we use the word elements. For the elements, we get the data coming from hundreds and millions of environments. But in this case, when in the army, the data has to be secure, but it's within our own domain. Over here, each and every department doesn't want to share their data with the other department, except for certain pieces of information. But when the data is coming to us, we have to take it to the big data, we have to do analysis, we have to look at from the criminal perspective, incidents, efficiency, its security. Yes, it's a mind-boggling exercise. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. And your comments have spurred a question which I want to take to Neil and Eric and then Michael and John. Neil, let's start off with you. And the question that's come in is that, look, we've all sort of bought into this dichotomy, this conversation or this narrative of smart cities. I like to, refer to it as smart communities because that brings in our rural communities as well. It doesn't just focus on the metropolis. But the question that's coming here is, okay, we all want to move more into digital environments and be more smarter of how we collect data, so on and so forth. But how are we supposed to now, in this economy right now, use fintech-like tools securely to get transactions going? Are these tools that we have for financial innovation and to spur the economy online, are these tools capable of getting people to say, hey, we can engage differently with each other, we can pay differently with each other? Are we pushing towards a new type of economy? Neil, starting off with you.
So it's an interesting question, right? It's a bit of a conundrum. You're building tech for inclusiveness, but we as a society, we're finding that our data is quite precious to us. And so giving that permission to be able to share, to be able to be included in this larger network that is more about sharing where we're at, what we like to buy, where we like to go, where we like to who we want to talk to, right? We effectively have to give that up in order for these tools to work. And so we're in this constant fight about bettering the technology, but at the same time, our societies, regardless of country, our societies need to effectively be able to be in a position where they're willing to do that. You've seen in China, for example, with tracing, right? Look at COVID-19 specifically. That came top down. Now we're trying to bring that sort of methodology here to North America, and it's head meet wall, right? And in that fight, we know what we want to accomplish, but we need to make sure that we have the individuals alongside with that. And so it's a bit of a tug of war, but at some point, there's going to be enough of a personal interest in everyone's commitment to, for example, contact tracing, to say, yeah, I'm willing to give up this piece of information for the betterment of my community, right? And therefore it makes sense. Technology needs to effectively help us understand or help to communicate to the individuals how they are going to protect that data once they have that permission. So it's a little bit of both, right? Tech needs to get there, but the environment, the communities need to get there as well.
Great segue into I'll weave in the other question here for Eric. And sort of building off where Neil says is that you're kind of right now, you have no choice. If you were doing person-to-person interactions and taking payments that way or whatever have you, or engaging in transactions that way. Now you have no choice, but it is going to move digital. Folks are familiar with Stripe and PayPal and all of these other things that are out there. But what is, from the city of Brampton perspective, how are you addressing some of the training needs that people have on how to scale and how to safely adopt some of these technologies and move into more e-commerce environments? These movements into e-commerce worlds come at a cost, come at a substantial resource strain as well. Is there anything that the city of Brampton is doing to support such businesses? Eric?
So from that perspective, yes, the biggest challenge is not to put the technology in front. And this is why many people and many organizations make the biggest mistake is, oh, we have that shiny technology, let's use it, right? And this is where we seeing the adoption level problems, training problems, and at the end, even value realization problem. So as far as that maybe sounds very strange, but I would say put the technology in a very last element of the chain of whatever you're using. Focus on a business need, not on a technology. Validate business need, value realization often as soon as you start, every week, okay, before you go too far, validate, is this really achieving and realizing the business value, okay? Then, and one of the elements also when people are very hesitant is whatever you do with the collecting the information and dealing with the information and everything, they personalize the information at the source, at the collection point. And so to gain the trust, because that's where the biggest challenge and resistance is from the user perspective, is the trust. Okay, do I trust that information, or do I trust the system that whatever I'm doing with the system will not harm me in one way or another later on? So one more time, and it's like validate the business need. Very often, focus on a business, don't focus on a technology. And as far as much as possible, pay attention to depersonalize the information at the collection point, at the source.
Thank you for that. And that element of, validate the data, look through the data, brings me to want to sort of get the conversation now towards Michael and John, and then we'll go back to Tariq Malik. Michael, they say carefulness costs you nothing. But in this environment right now, being careful, ultimately you end up going a little slow, and it can cost you quite a lot. We're getting questions about what are some of the security blind spots that we may be missing as we move our communities and our economies into the digital stratosphere. Michael, I'll give you a couple of minutes to comment on those blind spots.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say I love technology, and I think for us to move forward with e-commerce, for us to move forward in the smart city world, we're going to have to rely on technology. It is the key to move us forward in those directions. I think, Ali, you touched on it at the beginning when we started talking about security by design. And I think a lot of it where we look at, and trust being, that key thing, is we really have to be looking at the design concept of where security fits in as we're building out and we're strategizing and we're mapping out and architecting these financial solutions, these smart cities, and the way that citizens and users are expecting things to go going forward. There'll always be those that are very paranoid or worried and lack the trust. There are those that are too free-willing in their trust beliefs and will, try anything and not really care about it. From a security perspective, though, we really need to ensure that we are, where we can, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And as much as we move into an agile environment and, where we look to speed to getting things out, whether as a business impact or a business advantage, or whether it just be because of the demands and the needs, we have to ensure that security is staying in view and, not necessarily being the first thing and the most important thing in what is being done, but definitely continue to be in, because there will be those gaps, there will be those areas that if they're not easily identified or even seen at the beginning, they're going to pop up. And, we have to remember that there's some very smart people on the against side of security, you know, as well as on the pro side, right? And so when we look at the white and black side of cyber, a lot of smart people on the hacking and the threat actor side that are keen to look, to find, to probe, and to take advantage of any gaps that they find. And we have to be able to be prepared to either find them first or be able to deal with them very quickly once they're discovered.
And I guess this points, and it's a great moment to let the door open for John, because now, you know, the CISOs and the CIOs suddenly take on a little bit of a different reporting structure, because they're the ones who know, you know, what you could be facing. And John, I want to sort of hear from your perspective is that how has this, you know, the situation that we're in, how has this impacted how you're being heard in terms of the enterprise at large? Are suddenly people taking a little bit more note that, you know, our IT security folks and our IT leads are not just working in silos, and they're part of each and every step of what we do? John, some thoughts on that communication process?
Yeah, I think you know. So one of the comments I would make is that when you're building systems or implementing systems, and you're looking at security and privacy, it's always, you know, you always go into it hoping for the best, but you have to prepare for the worst, because it only takes one to knock you down. I can give you an example where an organization that I used to work at, there was an accounts payable clerk that received an email that said, please pay this invoice immediately. They double clicked on it, and lo and behold, it was ransomware, and it started to encrypt not only all of the files on her system, but all of the files on the network that it was attached to. And it took literally 2 seconds. And so if you aren't prepared for it, I mean, we were prepared for those types of things, but it still took 3 days to recover from it. You get organizations that if they're not prepared for it, it can actually shut their doors. And I mean, that's a big stretch for something that, you know, if you need to prepare for up front. I have for years been told that I'm too paranoid, but from a CIO, CISO standpoint, you have to be paranoid these days, because I think it was Michael said, these guys are smart. In a lot of cases, they're smarter than the guys on our side of the fence, and they know what to do. They know how to get through things. And it's really unfortunate that in light of COVID-19, they're utilizing that and preying on people, you know, with COVID-19. And it's just unbelievable how quickly it happens, and they don't care who they're going after.
I've got a question that's come in, and I want to bring it to Tariq Malik. But before we go to him, Neil, it sort of ties into some of the work that you've been doing, but from a smart cities perspective and how we can ensure that we're all thriving in the digital economy, are there any examples that you want to reference from a global perspective, or any partners that you're working with at Forpay where you can say, hey, this is a good model for us to look at here in the Canadian context? And I want to go then to Eric as well, and then Mr. Malik, to see what those global contexts are. Neil, over to you.
So I'll share with you one client that we have down in the Caribbean. When we looked at establishing their environment, you know, we could either go the legacy route and follow a very traditional waterfall approach. One of the things that we considered is obviously CI/CD, everybody's continuous development, continuous integration. But we also flavored in continuous security. And so in that process, there's this constant evolution of their platform at every release that gives us the refresh. And so it's a different way of thinking, that it's not security just done and then you kind of monitor it and see what's happening. It is ensuring that security is at the beginning of the conversation and at the end of the conversation. It's woven throughout CI, CD, CS. And that was one very simple model that we implemented day one for our client down in the Caribbean to help them effectively manage new technology. And it seemed to have worked. it's a best practice that they've brought in as a standard for their organization. So I would definitely say that, hopefully I answered the question.
And the question, a little bit more is, they've sort of made reference, and I believe this company has done some work with you as well. They're mentioning about, some of your work in the Bahamas, etc. So we'll come to that probably in the closing comments. But Eric and Mr. Malik, we'll start off with you, Eric. Is that from a city of Brampton perspective, your tagline is Brampton is now. You have a multicultural ethos in Brampton, a very strong trade community as well. What are some examples of initiatives or some partnerships that you form in order to propel forward this whole idea of a smart city, secure smart city, and taking businesses online? Eric?
So from that perspective, we always are looking for what other peoples are doing in terms of the smart city. And just before the coronavirus crisis hit, we have done the comprehensive studies on opportunities in what we call not necessarily the smart city, we call it a connected city in terms of the 5G technology, because this is what is happening. We know that 5G technology is coming, we like it or not, and the ISPs and technology providers are knocking to our doors. Or can we establish the partnership with you, and can we do something put the infrastructure in place? And the challenge from the city perspective is how we can respond and establish those partnership with service providers, which is equal and fair to everybody, but at the same time be mindful on this is limited geographic area, and even with one technology provider, 5G technology, as great as it is, from the density perspective, it brings some challenges. How many devices, how many antennas do you want to put on a square meter or square kilometer of the geographic area? So we did the comprehensive study with our partners, and we identified some business cases and opportunities which we were about to present to council and try to explore those opportunities. Why the challenge now is that, as everybody can appreciate, that world before the coronavirus crisis look very different than the now, and very different. The new reality will be very different. So the challenge from that perspective is how much of those identified cases and identified opportunities still would be valid after the crisis. So that's basically what it is, because we're talking about crowdsourcing data, we're talking about multiple sensors to help people outdoors to do certain things or to enjoy certain things. How much that will be a priority in terms of our value anymore. So that's the biggest challenge. But from that perspective, we were looking for 5G as a technology. It is coming, how we can use this to create what we call connected city.
And a very good sort of note on the connected city piece. And there's a couple of comments that have come in. So I do apologize. There are about 30 odd people who have had a bit of a challenge coming into the broadcast. So I've let you in through the third-party avenue that we have. Please keep pushing your questions at me. I've got my gadget set up, so I will moderate for you. Don't worry. Mr. Malik, sort of building on the point by Eric, there's a question that's come forward in, do actually the government leaders have that kind of an understanding of how essential security is as they move towards these, or as they keep reaching out further and further for the smart city ideal? Is there the right buy-in, and let alone the buy-in, is there sufficient understanding? I want to give you 2 minutes to talk to that from your experience.
Security is something which you don't suddenly understand or suddenly get into. Security is something which is in your which you live and breathe. And unfortunately, the leadership is always living in a different world. That is more to do with finances and the facilities and services. So it's a difficult task. But I'll share our experience in Dubai's case. The advantage was that if they didn't understand this thing, whether this, to get the security implemented, one thing they did very well, that they said there is a department who was going to look after the security. And once they approve it, then we will offer this. So they made their life easy. The department took it very seriously, and which is always the case. No, but the powers were given to the department that no one could override them and go and actually override them and move ahead. So once this department had the power, they stopped everything, and the questions were very simple. We sat down and looked at the scenarios. In my case, again, I've been dealing with the government. What I find is that quite often they think that the very simple amount of data, or the data which is public, it doesn't have any security value. But the guy or the team which is working on securing these environments, they actually need to understand the business process, the programming, the operating systems, the hardwares, the sensors, the networks. Then they look at the value of the data. And if they are coming from that sort of background, how can I use that data to actually use it to break in or against my enemy or whoever, whichever way you take it. So the value of the data, how you manipulate it, how you use it for whatever objective, whether to break in or whether to use that data for social engineering, whatever. So once you make them realize the value of very small piece of information, which they don't mind to be shared openly, then they start realizing. So the process is data, its value, how you manipulate it, how you take advantage of it, then you build the scenarios, and trust me, after that, they really, really, really understand it. As in another session, a lady was talking about it, that once I make them realize the value of the data, and I tell them, like she was talking about a fintech company, where financial company, where she had to go and tell them if the data of your most valued clients becomes public, what's going to happen? Who's going to do business with?
Thank you so much for that point. Now we have about 5 minutes to the close, but I do want to wrap up with some strong closing statements and action items. Michael, we'll start off with you. You've always, when we've been talking before, I've also shared this with my students that, repair and, not necessarily repair, but prepare and prevent is far better than repair and repent. And from your perspective, what is that one security aspect that as we push towards digital environments and we push towards taking even the most untouched person-to-person business as we take it to online environments, what's the one aspect from a security perspective you think we need to be paying attention to? One most important.
I think we need to be, comprehensive, and we need to be thorough, right? We need to not rush. Not go too slow, but not rush at the same time. And I like how you put that. To me, you're right. It is proactive over reactive as much as you can in this cyber world. But really, we need to take the time, whether it be through the vendor, through the government, through manufacturers, to ensure that we're doing it right, and I should say, be prepared to fix it or improve it as those gaps are found, and be prepared to do that quickly.
Very profound. John, I'll give you about 20 seconds-ish to talk about one aspect which has come up in a question. And that is this aspect of, security is not expensive. It's priceless. From your perspective, we've got a question asking, what's the one thing as a C-suite executive that's keeping you awake right now in this digitized environment?
Oh, there's so many things. I think it is the new ways that security is going to get breached. It's you can do your absolute best to make sure that you've got all the doors closed, but at some point somebody's going to figure out a way to open a window, and
Oh, yeah.
you need to be able to plan for how do we cover things off. You can't say, okay, well, if this happens, we'll do this, because you don't know what that is that's going to happen. But you need to have a way to be prepared and have a solution for a plan B type method that says, okay, if something happens, we'll shut everything down, we'll figure out what it is, and we'll get everything back up and running quickly. That's not ideal. Or you figure out ways to lock down pieces to prevent attacks until you can get it fixed.
Thank you for that. Neil, very quickly, because we do have to wrap up in a minute. I've got a couple of folks who have asked, hey, if we wanted to use ForPay for our services, what's the best way to reach out to you, Neil? So if you can just throw that out there, and I'll leave a lot, and I'll make sure that I get those contacts sent out by the email blast as well. Neil?
Yeah, visit our website at forpay.ca or go check out our new consumer portal at pay.ca. That's pay.ca. And just drop us a contact, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But I just wanted to add as well, I think Michael and John and Tara touched on it, but it's really growing on what Eric had stated initially, which is don't be afraid to pivot. You can have a great idea, but because security we're going to breakneck speeds, we need to make sure that we get the right product out there, we get the right solution out there to meet the need, and don't be afraid to pivot. Pivot as many times as you need to, because that's part of the evolution.
Fantastic. And Eric, for you and our friends from Invest Brampton, we've got Devin on, we have Astaba on, and we have Eric. Eric, what's if someone's looking for some resources with folks at Brampton, what's the best place to go to check those out?
So you're talking about the resources within the city of Brampton?
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah, so first of all, we have created something like the cross-functional team, which we call it Smart City Team. Maybe we will be rebranding this because we don't really like the Smart City Team buzzword. We like more like Connected City and everything, because Smart City is too much about the technology. And I don't believe that Smart City is really about the technology. Smart City is about how to make the city better to live and to live in using the technology. So the technology is in the back end. But from that perspective, yeah, we have then a good Smart City internal team, which is now focused on discovering and running some pilots. Some of those pilots we already put in a production.
Fantastic. So we'll make sure that we share your contacts as well. And, on behalf of Mr. Malik, the one thing that I learned from you today is, a cybersecurity breach does not happen by accident. So be aware of your blind spots. While you are moving into a hyper-digitized environment using financial technologies as well, we've got some great resources here in Ontario. Ontario is open for business, as you can see with Mr. Malik joining us as well. I do have to end this conversation here as another broadcasting group has to come in, but I thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I wish you all a happy, safe, and healthy weekend, and I hope to see you all at the closing ceremonies, where the rule is, if you do win the car, you give it to your pally alley. All right, so we'll talk to you later. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm going to jump into another session. Take care all, and I'll make sure that I share all the contacts with you. Take care.
Bye. Bye now.
Thank
Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Lou Vescio from Spark Niagara, and on behalf of the siberXchange Live team and our incredible sponsors, I'd like to welcome everyone to our Niagara Power Hour Town Hall. Our topic for today, reopening Niagara for business, and what will the way forward look like in Niagara after COVID-19. We're joined today by some of Niagara's leading officials from a variety of key sectors who will share their framework for our recovery, and we will introduce them to you shortly. But first, just a quick intro. Just like many other communities, Niagara has been experiencing incredible hardship from the devastating effects of the COVID-19 outbreak. Other than essential services, for the past 2 months, most retail businesses have been shut down. Schools have been closed, and we've been ordered to stay home and isolate. The social distancing measures, which are still in effect, have placed a great deal of hardship and stress on everyone in the community. Many of us are suddenly teleworking from home and are now having to balance our work obligations with many other responsibilities that may include educating our children at home and caring for our elderly parents and our neighbors. While Niagara Falls may be the #1 leisure destination in Canada, for the past 2 months, our hotel and food services industries have been hit hard by layoffs. Retail stores have been shuttered, and much of our manufacturing sector has been negatively impacted. However, the virus has also shown us that our Niagara community is quite resilient in times of crisis. Niagara's COVID response has demonstrated an unprecedented collaboration across all levels of government, our healthcare system, and our entire community. Out of necessity, many local businesses and manufacturers have become very creative just to survive, and many have had to pivot, changing their production lines to make entirely new products such as face masks, shields, and sanitizers, and now provide much needed protective equipment to hospitals and healthcare. Everywhere in Niagara, we've seen organizations and individuals stepping up in big ways and small, providing comfort, donating food and shelter, and offering services to those who are most in need. We're certainly grateful for our government officials, our healthcare workers, first responders, and all our essential workers who have worked tirelessly and made huge sacrifices to keep us all healthy and safe. And now, as we are seeing the lockdown restrictions beginning to ease, how will our daily lives be affected as Niagara gradually reopens for business? What will the new normal be? What does the way forward look like in our recovery? We know that what's ahead will be vastly different from what we saw just a few short months ago. And these unprecedented times demand unprecedented leaders. Today, we'll hear from key business and community leaders from across Niagara, who are the leading voices in their fields. Each of these officials play a crucial role in the reopening of Niagara, and will be providing a framework for any new protocols, safety procedures, and solutions being implemented in their sector to gradually open safely, and what we can expect to see in the coming weeks and months. At this time, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. Our first guest speaker needs no introduction. Mayor Jim Diodati is serving his 3rd term as mayor of the city of Niagara Falls and is focused on leading Niagara Falls through the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please help me welcome Mayor Jim Diodati. Our next guest has been managing local chambers of commerce in Niagara for the past 30 years, assisting hundreds of entrepreneurs in building their businesses and managing their growth. Please welcome the Executive Director for the South Niagara Chambers of Commerce, Ms. Dolores Fabiano. Thank you, Dolores. Our next guest has dedicated over 34 years to the policing profession and is proud to serve his community and lead the women and men, both civilian and sworn, as Chief of Police for the Niagara Regional Police Service. A huge welcome for Chief Bryan MacCulloch. Our next speaker is a very dedicated Niagara community leader and has more than 30 years of experience in senior management, the majority in the tourism sector. Please help me welcome the President and CEO of Niagara Falls Tourism, Ms. Janice Thomson. Our next guest's primary focus with Niagara Economic Development is to assist businesses with site selection and connecting them with resources to help start and grow their companies in Niagara. Please help me welcome the Manager of Business Development and Expedited Services for Region Niagara, Mr. Ken Scholtens. And our next guest was appointed Fire Department Chief, Niagara Falls in 2016, and his responsibilities include all aspects of fire department operations and administration. Please welcome the Chief of our Niagara Falls Fire Department, Chief Jim Boutilier. Welcome. And our final speaker today is Dr. Mustafa Herji, the Director of Public Health for the Niagara region. Dr. Herji was hoping to join us live, but due to scheduling conflicts, Dr. Herji will instead be providing his public health perspective by way of a pre-recorded video. Welcome to all of our panel guests, and thank you for being here. So for today's format, each speaker will take 5 minutes to highlight what their organization's plan is to reopen Niagara as we move forward. Once our guests have all presented, they will be answering your questions with the time remaining at the end of the session. So please submit your questions using the Q&A icon or chat, and we will direct them to the appropriate speakers later on in the session. And just a reminder that our guests have many commitments today, and so they may be jumping in and out of today's session. All right, so let's get started. So we're waiting for Mayor Jim to come on, and unfortunately he's not available. So we're gonna jump to our next speaker. So our first speaker, let me introduce Dolores Fabiano, the Executive Director for South Niagara Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Dolores.
Well, thanks, Lou. I'm very happy to be here today. So I'm going to quickly identify some of the issues that our businesses have had so that we can put our future actions into perspective. So right off the hop, we had some interesting challenges that our businesses experienced around technology. First off, in some of our more rural areas, beautiful places to live, but internet connectivity is still spotty at best. And we had, businesses who were actually driving around trying to find public Wi-Fi, trying to access public Wi-Fi from parking lots. It was crazy. We did come up with a solution for them, but it was almost unbelievable. We also had businesses that were working from home, whose home package just didn't cut it. And try and get a service guy into your house to upgrade your internet connectivity during this time. It's not happening. Majority of our members certainly had websites or a social media presence, but these resources weren't necessarily set up to actually conduct business transactions. So they didn't have inventory listed, they couldn't actually process payments. A good example right now is our greenhouses. Some of them are great, but others, you go to the website, there's maybe 20 plants listed with a statement to visit their store to see the other hundreds of plants that they have in stock. So just not set up to actually do business. Another challenge was information overload. Lots of well-meaning organizations trying to be really helpful, but just regurgitating everything that they were receiving to everyone they knew. So nothing was vetted. It was just an onslaught of information, which added to everybody's confusion and frustration. A number of our businesses realized real quick that they needed to revamp their business model. They're simply just not going to survive doing the same thing. They just need to make some bold changes. So moving forward, we identified right away that with our own reduced resources, we really needed to develop some strong partnerships to ensure that we did our job well. And one of the first calls that I made was actually to Dave at Spark Niagara. And we entered into a partnership along with Niagara Falls Business Enterprise Center to start offering some weekly webinars and Fika Fridays. So this is just a great way to keep businesses informed, engaged, and networking in a new way, a way that will likely be part of our new norm for quite a while. To deal with the information overload, we began offering video conferences featuring government officials and experts to just really provide those few nuggets of facts that people were looking for. Our first session was held quickly in April, and it featured our MPs and MPPs and really provided some great information on what assistance was coming for businesses, imminently. We've had a series of these, including some with our mayors, Minister of Economic Development, one this week on from Workplace Health and Safety that featured resources that are available right now for reopening safely. So we know that moving forward, this is the most effective way of getting information out. We'll record the sessions and we make them available so they can be consumed as required, and that's going to continue to happen. As I mentioned, a number of our businesses are looking at their business model, trying to figure out, what they need to do. We've set up some peer advisory groups to provide clarity. So typically these groups cost thousands of dollars to participate in. But again, we've partnered with some amazing people to be able to create and moderate these small groups of no more than 8 people, no like companies in any one group, so that confidential conversations can happen in dissecting and rebuilding your business model. Again, moving forward, I think these types of sessions are going to become more and more important. In terms of technology, a few years ago, we partnered with a third party to create NiagaraGiftCards.com. It's really a digital means of purchasing gift cards online to support truly local restaurants and services. It's social distancing at its best, actually. And right now, for those who don't have a digital platform, this is a great way to get into the game. All of the fees have been waived, so it's a good time to try it. We've also entered into a partnership with Brock University to provide summer students at no cost to local businesses. So businesses identify a 2 to 3 week project. It could be a marketing plan or creating an inventory catalog, whatever it is that they need. They'll submit the proposal to us, and then we go to Brock and they match up a student with the applicable skills to complete the project. So for our Niagara Falls riding alone, I believe we're going to have access to up to 25 students. If each student can take on 2 to 3 or 4 projects, it can have a pretty meaningful impact on the business community, helping them prepare for whatever comes next. So I'm a pretty optimistic person. I think we all know that the silver bullet for this pandemic is going to be a vaccine. Until that time, it's not unreasonable to expect a series of restrictions being imposed and then being lifted, and this happening multiple times. So our philosophy from the onset and moving forward is that we need to create feasible, practical, incremental ideas and resources that businesses can easily access and implement. I think I'm done with my 5 minutes. So in closing, I just want to say I'm so incredibly impressed with the sheer hustle and resilience of many of our businesses. They're not sitting back waiting for whatever comes next. Many are very proactive in telling us what they need, and that in turn really allows us to create the meaningful programming and services that they require.
All right, thanks, Dolores. That's great information for our local business members. Our next speaker, I would like to call upon Chief Bryan MacCulloch, the Niagara Regional Police Chief, for his presentation. Chief MacCulloch.
Good morning, and thanks, Lou. To say that the last several weeks have been unprecedented really doesn't give the current situation that we all find ourselves facing the credit it deserves. Since early March, when COVID-19 first became a tangible concern in our community, the Niagara Regional Police Service created a pandemic business continuity committee, and we've been meeting almost daily, and sometimes early on several times a day, keeping in constant communication to assist us in navigating the pandemic for both the impact it's having on our members and our community. I want to really emphasize this. The primary focus throughout the pandemic has really been about the health and safety of our members. As an essential service, we needed our people to be protected and healthy. And we quickly realized that if we weren't safe and protected, they weren't going to be able to fulfill our mandate to the community, which is obviously to serve and protect the citizens of Niagara. As a police service and as police leaders, we had a lot of experience in responding to any number of high-risk police-led public safety emergencies that were impacting our community. But we realized early on with COVID that it was different. That this was a public health crisis, and that in order to safely guide our members through the pandemic and maintain business continuity, we needed the guidelines and the support of public health. To that end, we reached out early to our local public health officials, Dr. Hergy and Dr. Andrea Feller, along with our emergency services partners at EMS and fire services, to ensure that we had a coordinated and unified response while relying on an evidence-informed approach to the pandemic. We've been diligent in ensuring members have situational awareness and really focusing on arming them with the most accurate and timely information provided by our local, provincial, and federal public health officials so that our members clearly understood the risks, but more importantly, they had the appropriate safety precautions in place to keep them safe. I'm incredibly proud to share that throughout this pandemic, we've not had to date a single member test positive. We have nearly 1,100 members within our organization. This I really credit to the diligence of our members in using their protective equipment when needed, and of course being vigilant in adhering to the medical precautions both on and off duty. We focused on engaging our members and clearly communicating with them throughout the constant flux of changing information that, as we all know, happened hourly, not just daily or weekly. Understanding that as members navigating COVID-19 in the workplace and the pressures changing in their workplace was also impacting their personal lives. Things such as simple as accessing childcare services and isolating from their family didn't allow them to be able to come into work as easily as they once did. Throughout the pandemic, our mandate has remained the same, the safety and security of our community. The reality is that crime has not ceased in the face of COVID-19, and responding to persons in crisis certainly hasn't changed. For most of our members and for members of the community, the day-to-day operations of the Niagara Regional Police Service resembles business as usual, with call volume really being consistent with pre-pandemic levels. There's been tremendous cooperation between police, fire, and EMS. We've shared PPE to ensure that our most vulnerable first responders are protected, and that we've established protocols to limit the duplication of resources responding to certain types of calls, which not only streamlined our response, but also preserved our supply of PPE. Our communications unit implemented a screening policy to ask questions of callers to determine where possible if there was a risk of COVID-19 that was present, which again allowed our officers to take the appropriate precautions. Our districts have been closed to the public, and many services have been pushed online to minimize the risk of exposure to both members of the public as well as our own members. We undertook a workplace assessment, and we identified members that could work remotely from home, and recognizing as first responders, that certainly doesn't apply to the vast majority of our workforce. But we have and continue to support nearly 200 members who are working remotely, which was certainly no small feat from an IT perspective, and something that, quite frankly, we had never contemplated prior to COVID-19. Throughout this, we've been committed to working collaboratively with our local municipalities, the region, our emergency services partners, to ensure that the public doesn't see a change in the response level, and of course ensuring that their needs continue to be met. As we now turn to the recovery phase, we continue to navigate, assess, reassess, and adjust to what our role will be as our community slowly returns to the new normal. We're ensuring that our members continue to be supported as those working remotely slowly return to the workplace in a very measured and strategic approach. We're not in any real hurry at this point in time. It's business as usual, as I mentioned. COVID-19 has undoubtedly changed our community and the way that we interact, as well as organizationally. But we've also experienced some really positive changes as well. Creativity and innovation have prevailed as we all look for new ways to continue to operate effectively and efficiently to address the needs of our community. Many of these innovative approaches will continue long past the current pandemic. One such example is our newly implemented mobile support unit. We have identified officers who were able to respond to a call remotely rather than in person. The approach not only eases the pressure on our frontline officers and allows them greater flexibility to respond to higher priority calls for service and conduct proactive patrols, but it also provides greater ease and flexibility for members of our community to speak with an officer when it's easier and more often than not, more convenient for them to do so. As leaders within our community, we must continue to be nimble and flexible as we respond and redirect our efforts to ensure that our strength, our people are supported and safe throughout the ongoing pandemic. I've often said that our strength is our people, and their health and safety has been and will continue to be at the forefront in guiding our organizational decisions as we move through this situation. As we now see the easing of restrictions, it's imperative that we as a community continue to adhere to the emergency orders that were established by the province and continue to do our part to limit the spread of COVID. We certainly recognize that business owners, more than anyone, particularly those right here in Niagara Falls, have suffered significant financial hardship. We also recognize that tourism is a large part of the economic landscape for Niagara. All of us want nothing more than to see our business community that relies on the tourism industry once again thrive. That said, it's incumbent on all of us as community leaders to remain vigilant to the threat that COVID-19 is present and continue to promote safe practices, again, aligned with the province's emergency orders, while strongly encouraging those that visit our region to respect the physical distancing requirements and all of the other public health guidelines that have been put in place to safeguard our community. Bottom line, we want our community to safely recover so that we can all continue to enjoy the beauty that we have here in Niagara. That's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief Bryan. That's great information, and it provides us assurances here in Niagara that the Niagara Regional Police Services will continue to protect us and will keep us all safe and healthy moving forward. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Jim Diodati. He's now available, and there's always something urgent going on, so we appreciate you taking the time, Mayor Jim, and the floor is all yours. Mayor Jim, please unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou, and thank you to Chief MacCulloch. That was great. Really appreciate it. And I want to just stress how well we've been working together with our police department, obviously our team at the fire department, and all throughout the region. It's been a collective effort. It's not been easy, because there's no COVID for dummies that we can utilize. There's no handbook for pandemics. It's being written as we go through this. It's a work in progress. So it's no easy thing. The most important thing overall, overarching, that I would stress is it's not a time to panic. It's been a time to plan. And a lot of people will knee-jerk and overreact, and that's not what we need. We need to always start with the end in mind and focus on where we want to go and where we want to take this. And of course, the ultimate will be when the vaccine is created and widely distributed. But between now and that time, that's the important time that we have actually some control over what we do and decisions that we make. And, there's been a lot of crazy things going on in the community, some that you're aware of, some that you're not aware of. There's a lot of McCarthyism, hey, they're standing too close. They don't have masks. He didn't wash his hands. They're in a group, they're gathering, and that's not the objective. The objective is to push the ball forward. And some people get caught up in the minutia, and that's our job, to help bring calm and order. And I'm going to say we've had an outstanding relationship with our friends at the police, and it's been great. So let's talk about a few things, the specific unique challenges here in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is the #1 leisure destination in Canada. So of course our problems are unique. We're a city of around 100,000 people that bring upwards of 14 million people. How do we deal with something like this? And I can't tell you, every day I do multiple TV and radio interviews, every day. And they're asking the same questions. And here's some of the questions. Should the border open? When's the border going to open? Well, there's a big challenge. New York State has around 20 million people. Ontario has around 15 million people, 25% difference. Yet they've got 10 times the COVID infections of us. So do we want to open up that border? I don't think it's a good idea. And I said, it's no different than if I had a sick family member, I wouldn't want them to come visit my family. And if I was sick, I wouldn't want to go visit someone else's family. I don't think that's right. We want to see you when you're feeling better. So let's take it one day at a time and let's make the decision as we need to. So the border is a huge issue that they keep talking about. Then the big discussion was, do we do regional openings, has been suggested by some public health officials. Now you got to understand, they're public health officials. Some of them are good doctors, maybe good scientists. They don't know. They're trying to figure this out like everyone else. They don't know. Maybe they're very good at being a doctor. They don't have any idea about processes, people, interaction, reaction. That's not their forte. We can't expect them to know or to understand. So we got to give them some grace too, because they're making mistakes like everyone else, and they're realigning. Take, for example, masks. You know, it wasn't that long ago, a number of weeks ago, they were saying, oh no, don't wear masks. That's the wrong thing to do. And now there was a pivot. And they said, oh my God, yes, wear masks. We need to wear masks. So they had to pivot too. So I just want to point out, I have my Diodati mask here. It's a peace of mind mask made by a resident of Niagara Falls. And you know what the province has done, they've pivoted. They went from stay home and distance and wash your hands. Now they said, stay safe. Keep your distance if you can't. Wear a mask and wash your hands. So there's been a pivot. It's been subtle, but there's been a pivot because we have to open up. We cannot continue along the path that we're on right now. And we're doing a great job. Here in Niagara, yesterday we had 1 new infection. The day before we had 0. The curve definitely is flattening. So here in Niagara Falls, we created a platform, a protocol that we call Crush the Curve, and it's been well received. We've got billboards all over the city, businesses, churches, service groups. They've changed their marquee signs to say Crush the Curve. And why did we do that? You know, we were being told we have to flatten the curve. We thought, well, let's make this a little more than flatten the curve, you know, because then I heard plank the curve. We thought, plank the curve. You know, why not massage the curve or feather the edges of the curve? We thought, come on, we're going to crush this curve. So we've worked hard at creating this campaign to bring it down. And it's just about awareness. It's about education. And I'd say everybody knows what we're trying to do, but you've always got that small group of people that don't care. You know, the bad apples that do what they want to do, regardless of the rules, regardless of the protocols, regardless of what's best. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And that's why I guess we have to have police and we have to have people, because there's always some people that just refuse to follow along. So what have we done? Crush the curve. And one of the things we did in the city of Niagara Falls, we created a Crush the Curve caravan a few weeks ago, which was great, well received. And we ran around to every residential neighborhood in the city of Niagara Falls with this small caravan of vehicles of interest, like an old 1938 pumper truck from the movie Christmas Story, the original Chippewa pumper truck. We had some Cars Kit from Knight Rider, from the Dukes of Hazzard, the General Lee, the DeLorean from Back to the Future, and a number of other really interesting vehicles. And wow, were we well received. And again, you've got those people, those McCarthyism kind of attitude people. Oh no, you shouldn't be encouraging people to go and drive around. And we said, we're not. We're rewarding the people that stayed home. We had to cancel the Canada Day Parade. We're canceling a lot of things, folks. The pools may be closed this summer. Looks like no organized sports. Looks like no school come September for most universities. We're waiting to hear about the rest. Like, we're in uncharted territory. We got to be mindful of the mental health of our residents. Already 1 in 5 people suffer from mental health issues. 1 in 5, 20%. Look around. That means on this call, there's some of us suffering. And when you look at the fact that 50% increase in counseling right now, people are stressed. There's 2 groups of people I see. One group, they're the ones saying, come on, let's get on with it. The numbers are extremely, extremely low. We've had 59 deaths out of 500,000 people. That's below influenza numbers. We got to get on with things. My God, businesses are closing. They're losing their houses. Marriages are crumbling. Family violence is up. What are we going to do? Just close and just wait for what? 0 infections? Because that day will never come. We'll never eliminate the flu ever. So we can't wait for 0. That'll never come. So we need to come up with something reasonable and acceptable to society when we can open things up and get life back to normal. Because the mental health is just as important as our physical health. And you know that. Anyone who's dealt with someone who's suffering from mental health issues, you know how important that is. So Crush the Curve, we went around and wow, the people were waiting. We had volunteers, 10 hours a day, 4 days, and they were sitting there banging their pots and pans. They had the noodles from their pools. Kids were drawing chalk messages on their driveways. They had signs. They were wearing costumes. They were doing dances, like Macarena. I think that was Lou Vescio was doing the Macarena's driveway. I'm not sure. I couldn't quite tell if that was that or the moon dance or the moonwalk. I don't know. It was an interesting version. But regardless, people were playing musical instruments, trumpets. It was just so well received. People were just saying thank you. And, you know, it really clicked in when I talked to one of my neighbors when she was saying, so when are they coming down our street? And I said, well, you know, don't expect a Macy's Day Parade. I mean, it's just a handful of fun cars with volunteers. And she said, oh, we just need something to look forward to, you know, and so that's the one side. And then you got the other side of people, the other group, I'll call the second group, that are really afraid. We have to acknowledge those people are out there. They're just afraid. And they're watching us to decide how they're going to react. And there are these people, they're drinking, they're rationing powdered milk in their basements. And we can laugh, but it's true. There's people that have not left their house in 3 months. They're afraid. And I understand that. That's really unfortunate. You know, we have to find that happy medium that people are going to feel comfortable, that we could move forward in life. Because I got news for you. Nobody gets out of life alive. So we need to make sure that we do it in a safe and meaningful way. And here in Niagara Falls, short of shutting the highway down, how are we going to stop people from coming? It's impossible. And I'll tell you something. I've been down at the falls for several hours on the weekends, watching and observing myself. You know, an old mechanic I had, old German mechanic used to tell me, trust is good, control is better. And so I like to go down and see with my own eyes, because I know everyone filters it through their own eyes. And I'm going to tell you, the people down there, was there gathering? Yeah, gathering of family groups that were traveling together. Were they social distancing from other groups? Yes, they were. Everybody? Well, no, not everybody. But I'd say the vast majority, 80% plus, were when they could, except for pinch points. And that's a challenge. But when you've got that many people coming over this period of time, it's very congested, it's challenging, but they were very respectful. And pictures and videos often misrepresent the facts. And we know that. And some people call it fake news. Other people are looking to create controversies, and social media, I'll tell you, it brings out the best and the worst in us. And I've seen good people saying not nice things about a lot of people, and it's really unfortunate. Some people behind a keyboard lose all filters, and they say things they probably shouldn't say, and it's led to a lot of mental health problems. But I'm going to tell you right now, most people were doing a very good job. Not all, but most. And what are we going to do to change things? I'm not really sure what we can do. Some people said shut the parkway down. But you can't shut the parkway down. People live there. Thousands of people need to get to their houses and their businesses. Well, shut the parking lots down. Well, we tried that. And the people park on the streets. That's against the Niagara Parks Act, and it creates a more dangerous situation. And then they said, well, shut the bathrooms down. We tried that. People are defecating and urinating in the parking lots, which creates another public health issue. So believe me, I said to people, if you've got constructive ideas, I'm all ears, tell us. We'll try it. And of course, they come back with, well, we don't have any of that's your job. We said, well, we're doing our best. But on a nice sunny day, people in the GTA are going to jump in their car and come to Niagara Falls. 25% come from the US, and the rest come from everywhere else. Around 60% come from Ontario, and the majority come from the GTA. And if they're a hot zone and they're coming to Niagara Falls, how are we going to deal with that? So what have we done in our tourism industry? We've come up and we've been having regular talks with our provincial and federal counterparts, and we have a recovery plan. Matter of fact, Minister of Tourism, Minister MacLeod, said we're the first tourism destination that have come up with a full recovery plan, and we branded it. And we're in regular contact with our counterparts in Vegas, in Connecticut, and all the other major areas. And I'm sure you've read in the news that June 4th, Las Vegas is opening up. They're going to do it in a safe way, as safe can be. And then Florida, Disney is going to do the same thing in early July. So it's happening. And I do like the dimmer switch approach versus the light switch approach, but we have to work toward opening up. And what are we going to do between now and the time that a vaccine is widely available? Start to open up and start to give people their livelihoods, because a lot of people, a lot of businesses are going to be significantly impacted, and many are going to close forever. And there's going to be some people really hurt. There's going to be some families crushed. There's going to be some really, really sad stories we're going to hear about. So we need to do all we can. We need to be responsible for everyone, the fearful and the fearless and everything in between. So I don't think there's any magic bullet or any panacea to any of this, but I always tell my kids, everything in life, I say common sense and moderation. Those are two things that you can take throughout life that'll always help you make good decisions as you filter your challenges. And you need to look at them through those lenses and don't react, because oftentimes the people that are speaking on social media, they're that group. They're not the silent majority, they're the noisy minority. And they're the ones out there making the most noise. And it's unfortunate that you can't be led by that. And us on this call, we're all leaders. Every one of you on this call were chosen because you're leaders. The job to lead is not an easy one. And sometimes it can be a blood sport. But the fact is, to be a leader at the front of the parade, you're going to get bugs stuck in your teeth, because that's the way it is. And you're going to have a target on your back oftentimes. And that's the way it is. When you choose to be a leader, you have to understand it's the good and it's the bad. And you need to, no matter what happens, lead through those times. And I want to thank every one of you on this call, because you're leaders and you're stepping forward and you're risking criticism. And that's what it is to lead. And it doesn't matter. You can go back through history. It doesn't matter who you look at. They had their challenges. Not one of them had 100% support. Not one of them did all the public absolutely agree. Not one of them had an easy path. But the right path is not always an easy path. And, you know, I would rather do what's right than what's popular. And we know what's right in our heart. And sometimes it means you're going to upset a few people, you know, but what do they say? To make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. So I just want to thank everybody on this call. We will get through this. This too shall pass. And we will be back to our feet again, because many people said, you know, are we ever going to recover? And I said, you know what? Resilience is built into our DNA here in Niagara. We've been through 9/11. People said, we'll never rebound from 9/11. Americans don't have passports. Less than 5% had them back at that time. And the last 5 years of tourism were outstanding. And I know we're going to hear more from Janice Thomson on that. We've had 5 great years because now the Americans pivoted and they got passports. And we went through H1N1, SARS, mad cow. We've been through lots of challenges. And now this one's the biggest for sure. But the other ones, I think, were preparing us for this one. And this won't be the last. There'll be more. That part you can rest assured. But you can know that every day that sun is going to come up. And every day we're going to start, we'll live to fight another day. So Lou, I just want to thank you for involving me with all of these leaders and let you know that I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate that the fact that none of us really know the challenges you deal with. The fact that you put on a smile every day and you go to work every day knowing there's somebody just waiting with a target on your back. And that's okay, because we're going to stand up for what's right. We're going to lead, and we're going to help the people get to the other side, because that's what we have to do. And that's why we've been asked to become leaders. So thanks very much, Lou.
Thanks, Mayor Jim. You've provided great information for the citizens of Niagara, and we appreciate your continued leadership in these very challenging times. Okay, we're going to move on to Janice Thomson, the president of Niagara Falls Tourism.
Okay. Good afternoon, Lou. Thank you very much also for the opportunity to be part of this panel. And I'd like to thank the mayor for his very motivational comments. They were great. So if you were to ask me now, what will tourism look like in Niagara Falls in the future? There's a very simple answer, and that answer is that no one knows for certain. We have guidelines that need to be established for each part of the industry. They have to be integrated into the operations. Staff and visitors need to be comfortable with those changes. And first and foremost, our visitors need to feel safe as they begin to travel again. But what we do know that we have many strong advantages here in Niagara Falls. We have the elements that make us that #1 tourism destination in Canada, and we're an international icon, indisputably representative of the country. Those items will remain intact. We will always be Niagara Falls. So combine those permanent elements, the natural sights, the breathtaking views, the walking and cycling trails, our top-class entertainment and gaming, attractions that entice visitors across all generations, world-class dining, breweries, wineries, and distilleries, Combine that with quality accommodation and their amenities, and we have that winning formula that makes tourism such a successful, integral part of this city. Without question, the people that make up the tourism industry are key to a positive recovery. But before we get to that recovery point, we are relying entirely on the health system and the public health authorities to provide the direction and the support for a safe relaunch of the industry. The health and safety of local residents, our employees and visitors remains the #1 priority at the moment, and that cannot be compromised. But I can assure you on behalf of the members of Niagara Falls Tourism that when the all clear is sounded from public health and the provincial government, we will be ready. As we've already heard today, this is a resilient industry, one that has encountered challenges in the past. There have been tough economic times, bad weather patterns that impact the seasonal businesses, global incidents such as 9/11, and now a pandemic preceded by SARS. We're fortunate here that we have experienced staff with an unshakable commitment to hospitality and welcoming visitors, supported by dedicated investors and entrepreneurs with a long-term commitment to this destination. Rich in infrastructure to host visitors, Niagara Falls is in the best possible position to recover once the pandemic has passed. We know that millions of people have memories of visiting Niagara Falls, and we look forward to helping them rediscover the destination and appreciating that it is in fact safe to play here in Niagara Falls. The resilient spirit of our business people will lead us to that positive recovery, supported by the services of the healthcare professionals, all of those in the first responder services, the municipal, regional, provincial, and federal governments. None of us can do this on our own. This is truly a collective effort, and we must never forget the sacrifices and the sorrow endured by families and healthcare workers who have been touched directly by COVID-19. The way it's impacted the tourism industry is obviously through jobs, through people being laid off. We have almost 40,000 people in this area that rely on tourism for their income and their families, and that has caused a great deal of stress. So we are, as an industry now, very much focused on the recovery plans. We will recover, we know that. And I would also like to say thank you to everyone on this call for their contributions to our collective safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice, for those inspiring comments on behalf of Niagara Falls Tourism. We really appreciate it. So we need to move on. So our next speaker is Ken Scholtens, Manager of Business Development for the Region of Niagara.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to echo a lot of what I've heard today already about the safety that is required, the importance of tourism, and the toll that this is taking upon a lot of us. As Janice mentioned, tourism has been hit particularly hard by COVID-19. The restrictions on large gatherings will most likely be in effect for quite some time and will directly attribute to how we can operate and offer our services. But I do think it's important to recognize that this has affected different sectors of our economy differently. The Niagara region is still an area of Southern Ontario that makes things. We're a strong manufacturing community. We export about $3.89 billion worth of goods every year. And some of those manufacturers are thriving right now, whether they're food processors, making PPE, or other items. And so it's our job to recognize that we can't paint everything with a broad same brush. And so that's our job at economic development, to understand what are the nuances, what are the challenges that different sectors of the economy are facing, what are the challenges different industries are facing, and how do we assist them. As Mayor Diodati mentioned, there's been a lot of knee-jerk reactions, there's been a lot of pivoting, and I don't think anyone is immune to that. 3 months ago, when this fallout started to occur, Niagara Region, in partnership with the 12 local area municipalities and the 6 economic development offices, we did a survey of approximately 12,000 businesses. We got thousands of responses back, asking, how is this going to impact your business? What are the ramifications? And it was very much a knee-jerk reaction. But we use that to communicate with upper tiers of government, the province and the federal government, so that they have the information they need to make the decisions on a go-forward basis of the programs that they'll be offering. We are currently in a second phase of, we have another survey open right now that closes on June 1st, which now 3 months in is going to provide us a better picture of the ramifications of COVID-19 that we hope that we can, or that we plan on using to inform our economic recovery strategy. Right now, the Niagara Region, again, in collaboration with the 6 economic development offices through our economic recovery team, is currently in the process of formulating what that economic recovery will look like. We understand that it's going to be aligned with the province's 3-phased approach. And we also recognize that it's going to be a public health-led initiative. Through many of the conversations that we're having right now, we understand that we can't go back to business as usual. We're operating in this world of what everyone's calling the new normal. And so we're trying to think outside the box and find innovative solutions that will allow businesses to reopen safely and offer their services safely. So, for example, one area that we're sort of looking into to see, is it even feasible? When we get the go-ahead to allow restaurants to reopen, we know, looking south of the border, that there's going to be limitations on the number of people that can go into that restaurant. Some states we're looking at 25% capacity, 50% capacity. So what can we do to help those businesses? We've already heard from the mayor of St. Catharines that they're going to waive patio permitting fees, and they're already going ahead with that. But some of the economic development officers are taking it one step further. How large can we make these patios? Is there the possibility of, closing certain streets at certain times of the day to allow those restaurateurs to extend their patios onto the street, to increase the number of tables available so that they can get the profits that they need to be a viable business? Again, these are things that we wouldn't have traditionally, sought out as part of our economic planning, but these unprecedented times require unprecedented measures. So we are working with our local stakeholders, we're working with our chambers of commerce, we're working with industry to understand the challenges that we're facing, because we want to acknowledge that this is not a time for government to tell business how to operate. Yes, businesses have to operate safely, but we need to know, what are they doing that can help us provide that framework for them? One thing that I do want to sort of plug, if you will, being mindful of time, is one of the ways that our department pivoted, along with a lot of the local area municipalities, was creating online business directories for those businesses that remained open during the COVID-19 pandemic, so that local residents could find out where they could order online, do local shopping. Simple things as just ordering takeout is now, the highlight of some people's weeks. So the Region of Niagara opened up openinniagara.com or openinniagara.ca, which is an online business directory. We have over 350 businesses that are advertising in there right now. And we're, again, working with our local area municipalities to coordinate the work that they're doing with the work that we're doing, because we know that businesses today need every ounce of support that they can get, and we're here to provide it to them. Lou, I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at that 5-minute timer, and I'll hand it back to you. But thank you for letting me participate today.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate your update representing the Region of Niagara. We're really pressed for time right now, so I'm going to pivot just a bit, and we're going to, at this time, show Dr. Hergy's video and his public health presentation, and then finish with Chief Jim Boutilier. So at this time, please enjoy Dr. Hergy's video.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mustafa Hirji, the Acting Medical Officer of Health for Niagara Region. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be at your conference in person. I hope you've been enjoying it, and I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to address you by video briefly. Hopefully, this will set up the context for the panel that is soon to come. I want to basically outline the public health perspective on where we are heading now, particularly talking about the provincial framework on reopening the province, and what we can expect going forward, and how that should inform how all of you work towards reopening Niagara. There's many measures that we take to control COVID-19. In the early days of the outbreak in January and February, we are really focused very heavily on trying to identify people at the border who might be bringing COVID-19 into the country, having us in local public health make sure to identify anybody who's ill, and as well having lots of people practice behaviors such as staying home if ill, washing their hands frequently. And the hope was with those three measures, we could contain the spread of COVID-19. And for 2 months, that was effective. Unfortunately, in early March, as we saw infections start to build up and grow exponentially, the province had to take more aggressive action. And so layering on top of those existing measures was the intense physical distancing that has happened, particularly some of the restrictions on business activity to make sure that that distancing did occur. Fortunately, we've seen great success with that, with a number of cases in Niagara having come down to small single digits most days. We even had one day this week where we had no new infections. However, of course, it has come at a great economic cost. And of course, it has not come out without health costs, as 59 persons have unfortunately passed away from COVID-19 in Niagara as a result. With things more in control now, it is our hope that we can start to recalibrate some of those measures so we can remove some of the economic pain while still ensuring that COVID-19 remains contained. However, it's important to remember that COVID-19 is still out there. The threat from it is not gone. We have just managed to stop the threat and stop the infections from spreading. If we take away one of those layers that helped us bring control of the outbreak, particularly that layer of intense physical distancing with restrictions on business activity, it will create the opportunity that infections could start to build up and start to grow again. And we've seen that in other parts of the world. In China, when they lifted their restrictions, they have seen a resurgence of COVID-19. In several United States, we are seeing a resurgence of COVID-19 as they have lifted their restrictions. And so our province is hoping to try and stop that. And the framework they've laid out is one of gradually lifting restrictions, observing what happens, and using that to inform what the next step is. The next step hopefully will continue to be to lift restrictions, but if they start to see infections growing unsustainably, they may take a pause on it, or they may even start to reimpose some of those restrictions so we can make sure unnecessary human lives are not lost in the process. And I think this is a really key element, that this is a process of recalibrating, and we will go as fast as we can while protecting persons. The province is not going to just reopen the economy without ensuring that health is protected. And so likely at the end of this stage of lifting restrictions, we will not go back to normal, because we know that that normal that we lived through in January and February was not enough to contain the spread of infections. We are going to need to have some ongoing elements to continue to make sure infections do not spread. Some of those will be the enhanced work that we are doing in local public health to test, identify persons with infection and isolate them, trace their contacts and isolate them as well. We are better prepared as a healthcare sector to do some of this work of containing infections as well. As well, of course, lots of our businesses have adapted how they operate. I think of grocery stores, which now have one-way flows of people throughout the grocery stores, as well as they have barriers at checkout lines. They're spacing people out to those checkout lines. And I think those are going to be the realities of how we proceed going forward. That we're not going to get back to normal. We're going to get to an interim normal, where we try to relieve most of the pain to the economy as we can, but we are still going to be in a state where we have lots of these additional measures to continue to contain the spread of infection. We will eventually be able to perhaps layer on something else that will let us lift those economic restrictions, but that something else is going to be an effective vaccine or effective medical therapeutics, and I suspect those are likely to be on the order of close to 2 years down the line. So I think most of us are going to need to be planning of how we continue operating in a modified way with physical distancing for the next 2 years. Something many people talk about is the prospect of a second wave of infection, and often talking about a second wave could come in the fall or the winter. I think they are right that there is still risk that infection could start to spread again. However, I think the lessons of a second wave coming in the fall or winter are taken from the examples of influenza pandemics, and I don't think COVID-19 is going to behave that way. We see with coronaviruses generally that they are less affected by hot weather, that hot weather is not going to stop them from circulating. In fact, we look at countries such as Brazil, which is on the equator. We look at a country like Saudi Arabia. We look at countries like Iran, India, Pakistan. All of them are seeing significant challenges with COVID-19 and faster case growth than we are seeing here in Canada. And I think that's evidence that we're not going to see COVID-19 be in a lull through the summer, that if we do see a resurgence of COVID-19, it's not going to be 6 months from now, it's going to be maybe 6 weeks from now. And so we really need to right now continue making sure we're taking those measures to protect ourselves, those around us, and starting to reopen our economy by making sure we plan to have those measures in place so that we don't see that resurgence and we can continue taking steps to reopen the economy further. The last thing I really want to say here is that while we're laying out a timeline here that likely we're going to continue seeing restrictions over the next 2 years, that we will not get back to a full normal, that we are going to be at risk of a resurgence in the next coming weeks, I think there's also an opportunity here for entrepreneurs to think of ways of how do we as a society better adapt over the long term to COVID-19 and the need to maintain some level of physical distancing and some level of measures that will stop the spread of infections. What are innovative ways of us delivering programs and services and businesses and products? What are new services and products that can help us actually manage the situation better and return to some of the kinds of activities that we were able to do in the past, which we have not been able to do right now? Hopefully that's an area where we can see some enormous innovation here in Niagara, and we can hopefully lead our country and even the entire world in helping to live through the next 2 years in a way where we remain safe, but we stimulate economic activity and we stimulate having a more vibrant society as a result. As a closing comment, as we go through the next 2 years, I really just want to emphasize that so much of what happens is going to depend on what we all choose to do in terms of our personal behaviors. As much as possible, if we ourselves are keeping that 2-meter distance from others, we're washing our hands frequently, we're staying home if we're sick so we're not spreading around whatever infection we might have to others. If we're doing those kind of behaviors and role modeling those kinds of behaviors for others, I think we can hopefully set that societal norm that'll give the government the most freedom possible to continue lifting restrictions on our economy and allowing us to return to an interim normal that is as close to the usual normal as possible. So those are my comments that I have to share with you to set out the public health context and where we may be headed. I wish you a very productive panel on exploring these ideas and where we can go as a society to manage over the next couple of years. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Hergy, for taking the time to provide your public health perspective. And so at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the Niagara Falls Fire Department Chief Jim Boutilier.
Thank you very much, Lou, and good day to everybody that's on this and listening. I just wanted to talk briefly on a couple of things. So I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but Niagara Falls Municipality had activated their Emergency Operations Center back in March. And the reason for an Emergency Operations Center is to deal with emergencies such as disasters, pandemics. And the committee is made up of all of the interested parties through the senior staff and the city. And we deal with everything to ensure that our community and our citizens and staff are kept safe, and how we're going to return to business in the future and what we were going to close. Moving on to the fire service itself, obviously we've been working very closely with Niagara EMS, the police services, both Niagara Regional Police, Parks Police, etc., to deal with emergencies. Essential services and emergencies don't go away. We did limit some of them within fire services to lessen the exposures around firefighters. We reached out to the community, who cooperated extremely well for us with regards to not having open air burning events. Don't start fires and cook in open air in your backyard, so we didn't have to expose our staff to the community, or in fact expose the community to our staff, because we're at a very high risk of catching the COVID-19. And I'm very proud, as Chief MacCulloch had said earlier, to state that we have not had anybody test positive in the fire service to date. And through our diligence of our staff and wearing our PPE and taking the proper precautions, we should hopefully maintain that throughout the rest of this. So what's new? What's going to be new? Well, fire services is going to, as we respond to calls, you're going to start seeing our fire service staff wearing more and more PPE in the future. We're going to maintain our surgical masks. We're going to maintain our gloves and glasses and things like that as we come out of this, and probably even when we are completely out of this pandemic, because there's other issues, there's other concerns that could come down the road. As the mayor alluded to earlier, we went through SARS, we've gone through H1N1, now we're into COVID-19, and who knows what's to come. So we're going to take care of those businesses and ensure that we're safe. The other things to the building community, we're going to start to move into electronic versions of site plans and dealing with those types of things, plans, examinations, our inspections, all of our building stuff that's considered to be essential, and we need to ensure that we're doing those so that our city recovers properly and recovers quickly and maintains our construction and maintains our building business continuity. So that's some of the things that you're going to see fire services with regards to some changes. I also think it's very important to mention that accessing health and social care needs are going to look different in our community and across the region. And we need to learn, obviously, from the experiences through COVID, that new partnerships in delivering health and social care that were forced to happen through our COVID situation provided innovative and enhanced ways to provide services in a departure from the traditional means. Our calling of 911 for an emergency response is not appropriate for many health and social needs, but we recognize that public needs our assistance in determining how they access the care they do need. So we need to make sure that the services and systems in our region can help navigate people to more appropriate services and resources other than our traditional paths. The reliance on the former system is not sustainable post-COVID, nor can we default back to the previous ways service delivery and planning for the next pandemic to occur. And I know we're cut a little bit for time, so in closing, remember it's not over, but we can open slowly and safely by following the public health guidelines of maintaining physical distance, washing your hands, and don't touch your face. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Fire Chief Boutilier, for that great information. So unfortunately, we've run out of time and we're not unable to answer any of your questions. So I'd like to wrap it up. I'd like to first start by thanking our guest panel for your inspiring insights. We hope that the information provided to our guests today was beneficial and practical. And from what we heard today, we know that we're in very capable hands with these Niagara community leaders. They're all focused on our safety, community readiness, and economic recovery. While COVID-19 has affected us all on so many different levels, it's important that our Niagara community continue to take direction from the experts to find ways to push past this virus and remain resilient and strong together. Please remember that each one of us must share the responsibility to remain vigilant, to do our part, to take care of ourselves, our family and friends, and our entire community to stay healthy and safe. So in closing, on behalf of the siberXchange organizers and our sponsors, I'd like to thank our guest speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us today, to provide us with clarity and direction for what's in store for Niagara as we reopen for business. And finally, a huge thank you to you, all of our viewers, for taking the time to join today's Niagara Power Hour. It's been an honor for me to host today's session. Everyone, please enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care and stay safe.